I never knew that by declaring my life to be one of love and prosperity, that all my fear thoughts that were hidden in my subconscious, all my scarcity thoughts about myself, I'm not good enough, I don't belong, comparing myself to others. I didn't know that by doing these affirmations and doing personal development, that the next challenge would be doing soul work, which is very different. Soul work is about looking at aspects of yourself that are unlovable and finding ways to heal them and love them by facing them and letting them go. That's the God self work. That's soul work.
Welcome to the MINDTRX podcast with breakthrough ideas to live your best life possible and how to make it happen. I'm Paul Scheele, and today we will be joined by Steve D'Annunzio. Steve D'Annunzio is a life coach and spiritual teacher who helps people access their higher self so they can live more joyful, productive lives. Using prosperity principles, mindfulness training, sacred sound, personal mentoring, spiritual maps, caring questions, and an insatiable love of people, he helps people co-create a path to live their soul purpose. Hello, Steve. Welcome to the MINDTRX podcast. It's really good to be with you, my friend.
Super good to see you, Paul. You look great, and it's an honor to be here.
Thanks. Well, let's get into it. There's a lot of cool things that you're bringing into the world, have been bringing for decades now. You've been working a lot in the financial industries, helping professionals create really tremendous results, orders of magnitude more than those in the same companies that haven't been studying your work. So I'd like to have you, if you would, set the stage for our listener to understand the study that you did back in 1999 to 2004 and the tests that you ran in 2005 as a proof of concept. What was it? What have you discovered? What kind of difference is it making in people's lives?
Yeah, great question. We created a questionnaire working with insurance companies specifically for agents about what was the most important thing to the agent when they were meeting with a client. And what we found was there were 5 magnitudes of responses. And the people that were responding that they were there to create value for their clients were, first of all, the ones and the only ones that really wanted to take our courses, which was really interesting. We found that there certain people were, I sell insurance because I have to pay the bills. And they were always living in fear and they were producing the least. The people that next level that we found were people that all they wanted to do was successfully sell an insurance policy to somebody that day. We called that desire mode. And they were struggling slightly better than the people at that lowest realm of fear mode. And interestingly, all the people in what we called fear mode, which were what we would call level 1 leaders, like they weren't really leading in any way and they were struggling. They were only like what I call a situational leader. If the situation required them to make a powerful decision, they would, but they would not be proactive. They would only be reactive. They would wait till they needed to do something, and only at the last minute would they do it. And finally, with that second mode were people that we saw that were slightly producing more, that were in what I call desire mode. They were what I call a satisfactory leader. They were taking more action, but they were not ever reaching the level of their goals. And then we found this interesting third level. They were what I call the status driven leader, and they were in pride mode. They would say things to me like, in answering the questionnaire, I love the business, the people drive me crazy, but I need people to sign life insurance policies. So, you know, while I don't really like people, I like the money. So, and I'm good at it. So I do it. And what we realized was they were a series of personas and facades. They would act one way. They were really smart intellectually. They had high, what you and I would think of as IQ, intellectual intelligence, but seemingly their emotional intelligence wasn't quite as high. The energy that they were running was still about what I call commission driven. And then there was like a line we noticed where we saw people that had a very different set of values. Their internal core values were quite different. And we wound up calling them mission driven people. And what they would do was allow their core values to direct their behavior, especially in times of challenge, conflict, or upset. So they didn't have to have, and none of them had integrity as a core value. They didn't have to. They were already integrous. Their core
Mm.
values were listening, treating people right, honesty, authenticity, success, prosperity, abundance. So it's interesting. Whenever they had a challenge, they would default to their core values. And then we saw a very unique group of people. I would say 0.001%. I maybe met two or three out of the thousands of people I was working with, and I would call them love driven. Now, when I talk about love, Paul, I'm not talking about love as an emotion. I'm talking about love as a choice and a way of being in the world. My definition of love is two ways. One is internal, which is choosing to be the greatest expression of your higher self, what I call the creator self or the God self. The other version that I used with them was that they created massive value for their clients. And the LOVE acronym was leaving others valuable experiences. LOVE. They were there solely to listen to their client, ask great questions, and then create massive value according to what the client wanted. That was the big distinction in those five modes. So,
Now, those five modes, over these decades that you've been playing with it,
mhm,
you have seen across society, not just across industry, but that people in general are operating out of one of these five modes
yes,
as an ongoing lifestyle or
yes,
ongoing, I guess you would call it a paradigm,
it,
mindset, a way of
yes,
being in the world.
yes, exactly right. Um,
Now
what I
you,
noticed was it was not endemic only to that industry, but
right.
actually all walks of life. What I began to see was that fear driven people see the world as a battlefield and they're out there constantly fighting, fighting, fighting. And that puts them back here in the reptilian brain. People in desire mode always want, want, want more. But
Mm.
unfortunately, because of the law of sympathetic resonance in physics that says like attracts like, that degree of wanting keeps them in the mammalian brain. The limbic or midbrain does not allow them to access their frontal cortex, their inner genius. Right? Buckminster Fuller said everybody's born a genius, but few of us allow ourselves to actually access it because we never leave these lower modes. And what I also found was that the people in mission and love mode began really teaching me what I needed to write in the current course that we teach.
Oh,
And that's
nice.
what the five capital resources are. And of course, I teach that in this new book, Soul Purpose Meditations.
Very cool. And you make, after your study and you began producing this program, you then wrote the book, The Prosperity Paradigm. So
Right.
could you contrast the scarcity paradigm
Yeah.
from the prosperity paradigm and explain also to our listener what the term paradigm means in case they're not absolutely clear?
Yeah. Paradigm is a set of worldview belief systems that direct our lives. What we have discovered is that human beings have a series of beliefs that are put in by first their parents or caregivers, then their teachers in early elementary school, middle school, high school, college, and then the social fabric of society, magazines, podcasts, radio, internet, um, and then work friends, workmates. We are other created beings. The beliefs that we have are rarely chosen originally by ourselves.
Well, for sure, we're born into the world utterly helpless. We can't really take care of ourselves. And we have to be likable enough to our caregivers. So we have to conform to a certain extent, right?
Correct. And therefore, we have these three brains in our head: the fear brain, fight or flight, the reptilian brain, the amygdala, the mammalian brain, which is want or worry, and what I call the logical brain, the executive brain, which is really about learn, logic, and then love. But very few of us realize that we are being directed by the scarcity program of our society, because the great truth is scarcity is a reality in the physical world. The only place that prosperity exists is through a conscious choice in our mind. And that's why I think MINDTRX is such an amazing opportunity for people to listen to, because you can literally help people morally and legally and spiritually change your mind in a positive way, which is really the essence of what I do. The first thing we do in our course was I noticed a very different mindset in the mission and love driven people. And those agents and those CEOs that were running these extraordinary companies were teaching me the mindset. And we developed a course around the first capital resource, which is helping people shift from fear and scarcity in the scarcity paradigm we are all born with, not because we're bad or anybody did anything wrong, because we're human, into the prosperity paradigm, which must be chosen. And I make a big distinction, Paul, in the prosperity paradigm of three essential distinctions. The first is that we love people and use money. In the scarcity paradigm, we love money and use people. In the prosperity paradigm, we make a conscious decision to feel the fear and yet create value anyway, meaning choosing love over fear. Huge distinction, really important. Once we're in fear, our brain chemistry shuts down. We disconnect left and right brain. We move out of our genius brain back into our fear brain, and all we can do is fight. And so this is the quandary of being human, is that in evolution, the reptilian brain was not replaced by the prefrontal cortex or the executive brain, but rather the executive brain was added to it. So we're almost like a rickshaw with a jet engine, you know?
A five-layer cake for
Right.
sure.
Right.
And yeah, and at the core of it, which is what happens, we down-regulate when something catastrophic happens into those lower brain centers. And it does require a conscious choice to move up the ladder of energy into those parts of our brain that can see the big picture, can connect with the true abundance that the
Yes.
universe naturally is. So you talk about something called prosperity economics, this idea of the
Hmm.
velocity of value. And
Yeah.
I love the way you place the value of people and love, and that money is a result of
Right.
a way of operating in the world. Could you say a little bit more about this velocity of value concept?
Yeah. So the third distinction that I said, we made three important distinctions. I made the first and second. The third is that people are assets. So in the scarcity paradigm, money is the primary asset and the most important thing in the world. But in fact, and we now have really good evidence of this from the Harvard research study written in the book, The Good Life, that just came out in January of 2023, that people, the key to the good life is great relationships. So as we begin to see people as assets, and as we begin to develop the heart of servant leadership, which is that creating value for people causes dollars to follow value. So
Mm,
the more value we can create for other people, we start to create what I call compound interest. Now, it's not only an economics term where you might put money in the stock market and it builds over time. That's what most people think compound interest is. When you understand that money is actually the fifth asset, the fifth most important asset, the most important asset is your mind. Everything is being processed through your beliefs, and we're all born with scarcity and fear beliefs. So you must understand first, you have two aspects of your mind here. You have the creative brain and you have the destructive brain. And you want to nurture creative thinking. We have a whole system around that. And I think MINDTRX is a fabulous way for people to begin using some of the paraliminals that you'll talk about in that next segment. But the second asset is your time, and the third is your relationships. And the more you nurture relationships, which are the real key to building a life you love, and by the way, I call soul purpose, is not something you do, it's building a life you love by first nurturing creative energy in your mind, by choosing love over fear, and then making the time to nurture relationships with the right people that you can create value for, knowing that prosperity always follows back from value created to the other. And as we continue to build networks of good people, for instance, you and I met in a network of 150 people that we meet twice a year, typically. And I've listened to, I know you had Joe Vitale recently on, who's another great guy that's doing amazing work in the world. And so you're creating value in these pockets, and the value ripples out in a compounding effect where, like people who are creating more value, draw more value creators, share in ideas together, maximize the velocity of value starts to grow exponentially, and dollars are a effect, not a cause. Our cause is loving each other, leaving others valuable experiences.
Oh, that's gorgeous. Yeah, I remember that Joe Vitale said that he wrote a book called Money Loves Speed. So, yeah, velocity is really key. Well, the interesting thing about this, Steve, is when I started my company, Learning Strategies Corporation, in 1981, the very first set of checks that we had printed with Learning Strategies Corporation on it, I had a line of print placed right where I would sign my name, just below it. And the line of print was a quote from the then chairman of Sony Corporation, Akio Morita, and it said, "The only and everlasting source of profit is the creation of value." And so every time I signed my name to send it out, I would reaffirm that core notion. So it's so exciting to me to read the work that you've discovered and have been able to help others really embrace that mind is the thing that creates value. And if we're really on our soul purpose, SOUL purpose, then we're going to be connected to what is the ideal next step for us to take. We're always getting the intuitive, creative downloads of how might I create, serve my clients most effectively
Mm-hmm.
in my next action. So kudos to you. I think it's super powerful. Now, as
And I
we were
also want
talking,
kudos to you because when I look at what you and Pete and your whole team have done with learning strategies and how many great value creators that we love and know and care about, you've helped launch books and you've launched all these amazing programs. And not only are you fulfilled and happy and healthy in your relationships, but you've also become really, really wealthy. Like your economics are really flowing because you're in this compound interest with a group of great value creators, which that's what makes our life rich. It's not the money, it's the relationship capital
yes.
that increases the velocity of value. And that means other people.
Well, people always ask me, "Oh, well, you're at the age of retirement, aren't you?" I said, "Look, I got my doctorate at age 55. My intent is to continue to compound the interest of my
Love
value
it.
to the world and
Yeah,
keep bringing out to the very last breath that I breathe." So, there's no stopping point for the kind of work that we do. Yeah,
beautiful.
and thank you. You went through the dark night of the soul for
Yeah.
yourself, and you came out on the other side of it with a new book, a new set of recordings, talk about soul purpose meditations. Could you say a little bit more about what you discovered in that process, not only about your own work, but the way the whole universe works and why you've come out with this next level?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for asking that great question. I was very, very fortunate to be invited to share the stage with some people that were personal development mavens. And I became students of theirs. And I began applying those principles And I understood that personal development was a real key way of shifting paradigms from fear to love. But what began emerging in me, the more personal development that I did, the more I started to see things coming out of me that were calling to be healed. I never knew that by declaring my life to be one of love and prosperity, that all my fear thoughts that were hidden in my subconscious, all my scarcity thoughts about myself, I'm not good enough, I don't belong, comparing myself to others. I didn't know that by doing these affirmations and doing personal development, that the next challenge would be doing soul work, which is very different. And soul work, and the distinction is personal development is learning the laws and principles, right? The principles of prosperity, the laws of life and love, and using them to set goals and achieving those goals. It's excellent work. I highly suggest everybody do it. Soul work is about looking at aspects of yourself that are unlovable and finding ways to heal them and love them by facing them and letting them go. That's the God self work. That's soul work.
See, and I want to just put a pause in there for a moment
Mhm,
because very often, even teaching a reading course called photo reading, right?
mhm, mhm.
I I would always say to people, now this isn't just about learning to read faster. You're going to discover things about yourself,
Mm,
wounds that you have as a
mhm.
learner,
Yeah.
that you're not good enough, you're not fast enough, you're not smart enough, whatever it might be. I can't do your healing work, but the context of this training program will give you the opportunity to do that. And it sounds to me like that's what you're making the distinction of. The healing work is healing those repressed, denied, um, rejected parts of ourselves that we don't want to face, we don't want to look at, allowing it to come up for the purpose of cleansing, releasing, and empowering, because there's gold in that. There's a
Yes.
lot of important resource in those parts of us that we have been denying.
Yes. Exactly right. Exactly right. And so deciding my life was worth a deeper dive.
Yay.
I started writing the first 40 meditations. I had been reading the Course in Miracles, but the Course in Miracles was so advanced and too advanced for many people. For instance, people that were struggling with money, one of the principles in the Course in Miracles was if you want more of something, give it away. Right. So at a very advanced level, we can make sense of that. But for someone struggling to pay the bills, they're wait, I don't have enough money and you want me to give it away. And so I really realized how useless that was for so many of us. And so I began writing, contextualizing things. I was writing these meditations, meeting my clients where they were, and writing to them about looking at their fear and teaching them how to access their creator self, how to access love within them. And simultaneously, as I was writing these meditations and doing them, all my fears began to come out. As I was writing about prosperity, all my scarcity programs came out. And all of a sudden, I began having marital problems. And I wound up going through a divorce and deciding my life was worth a deeper dive. And listeners, you are the gift here. You are the star of the show. Okay. Your life is worth that deeper dive. That's why we're here, right? We're in Earth School, man. We're in the lost and found, right? So when that stuff starts to come out, that's your soul calling you to wake up. And when the programs start to come out, keep going because that's the golden moment that Paul was just talking about. And if you use soul purpose meditations, it will tell you how to walk through them day by day. So I began writing these first 40, sent it to 108 students, and they're telling me, you've got to write these next 40. Well, simultaneously with me doing them, I began going through all this soul work, going through a divorce. I began writing the next 40 and burdened by my business, parental, personal responsibilities, I let it go and came back to it only 5 years ago, 5 years after the divorce. Fell in love with a gorgeous lady and began revisiting it. And these next 40 came through me. They're not channeled work. I want to make this distinction. There's wonderful trance channelers out there, the Seth work and Abraham, and currently Paul Scheele is doing some really great trance channeling. That's not as useful as what I did was address the tyranny of my own inner critic, my own inner ego that was telling me I'm not enough, and kept going beyond it to find this inner creator, what I would think of as the voice of the divine. In Christianity, they call it the Holy Spirit. In Buddhism, they call it Buddhi. In Hinduism, they call it the Atman, the inner God self, the inner life force energy. And once I was able to really hear that and listen, these came through pretty clearly. And I would humbly submit that anybody really looking to build a life you love would get great value out of soul purpose meditations, which are a spiritual philosophy of love driven leadership.
Nice. And that love-driven leadership, I want to also emphasize from the earlier points that you were making, is that step beyond mission-driven. So it is the fifth and highest level.
It
The
is.
idea that not only we could aspire to that, but there is a step-by-step process by which we could accomplish that, I think is an important part of the
Yeah.
work that you've articulated and are sharing in the world. You talk about stepping through phases
Mhm.
as we make a shift from the old paradigm to the new paradigm. You
Yeah.
say in phase one, there's discontent, frustration, disappointment. Phase two is willingness to admit the current paradigm isn't working.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that you had to reconcile because you were getting these images or messages that didn't jive with everything else that you were bringing into the world. Step three, openness to seek and implement new attractor possibilities. And I want you to speak to the idea of attractor possibilities. Step four is applying the new pattern, trial and error, see what works, modify,
Mhm.
continue.
Mhm.
Step five, I love it, persist.
Mhm.
Learn, course correct, persist.
Yeah.
Stay in it, stay in it. And the sixth step is you successfully arrive. And I think that success isn't a destination that we arrive at, but it's a spiral dynamic of continually up leveling the life
Mhm.
that we're living to greater service, to greater contribution to
Yeah.
humanity. So, if you would talk a little bit about this attractor concept that
Yeah.
I think is the turning point for a lot of us.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you latched onto that as a good student of the universe and the world. Everything. So when Big Blue came in, and we're now seeing this in AI too. Big Blue was the original IBM computer that could do calculations that no human could do or team of humans could do, and literally millions of calculations per second. And the entire human story was originally loaded into it, thinking that nothing would come out, that it would be stochastic data that was not, wouldn't show a pattern. But interestingly, a pattern came out, which is that everything, all books, all matter, all movies, all foods, all thoughts, all beliefs fall into a yin yang category of life, that which affirms life, that which destroys life. And what we found is when we are attracted to that which destroys life, our genes express differently. This became what we now know as epigenetics, which is gene expression. Why does two sets of twins born with the identical DNA, the positive thinker, the positive attitude always lives longer? We know that thought creates things and thought affects form. And so these two attractor patterns in life, what we would call weak force attractors, that which is humanity minus, that which destroys life. And then we have what are called strong force attractors, that which is humanity plus. Like the learning strategies company is humanity plus, so it's experiencing this great abundance. But we must remember that abundance is an effect in a world of cause and effect. The cause is the prosperity paradigm, which is a set of beliefs based on serving value to another human being. And serving value is this now new model that we see in what might be called conscious capitalism or compassionate capitalism, as opposed to the dark side, the weak force attractor aspect of capitalism called crony capitalism that is unfortunately prevalent in the world today.
Well, that distinction of being able to very simply step to the positive side is something that can be practiced with each thought, with each plan we make as we start the day, as we conclude the day. How did I do? Is there some way I could have done it better? And ultimately, the abundance attractor is love. That's where true abundance comes from. Now, you also have a formula, you called it April,
Right.
awareness commitment,
Yep.
pattern interrupt,
Right.
reality statement,
Right.
instant prayer. I'm
Yeah.
assuming that L stands for love, but
Yeah. It's love. But again, it's
so
love, not as an emotion.
yes, I love
Yeah.
that distinction.
Hmm.
Love is the fundamental attractor pattern, the
Hmm.
thing
Yeah.
that holds coherently the
Yes.
universe in place as we know it.
Yeah.
And we
Yep.
can emulate that, which is
Correct.
the great opportunity that we have. So for as we're wrapping up, could you
Hmm.
walk us through this formula as perhaps a way that each of us might practice this up leveling of our consciousness to reinforce the prosperity paradigm in our lives and really create the abundance, eliminate the stress, step into the abundance that's available to us all.
Yeah. Let's just start with awareness. Awareness of being is called consciousness. Not many people understand what consciousness is. As a doctor, you know that in the allopathic or traditional medical community, consciousness means the patient is awake and before he has regained consciousness, right? Now he's unconscious. That is not what we mean. What we mean is the awareness of who I'm being, who I am. And so awareness really is looking first internally at the only two qualities of thought. The weak force attractor thoughts are called fear, and they show up as scarce thoughts. I am not enough. There's not enough money. There's not enough hope. There's not enough time. There's not enough good people. There's not enough jobs. There's not enough trust. It's this endless not enough, not enough. And as we project that energy, we are electromagnetic frequencies vibrating a Wi-Fi signal constantly through this physics law of sympathetic resonance that then therefore generates back to us a reality that confirms the not enoughness, right?
That's a
So the
wonderful
first,
thing about mind. It's always running ahead, trying to validate whatever thought we're holding. So,
indeed,
yeah, yeah,
indeed. And the problem is we have in our subconscious mind all these weak force attractor thoughts that make us feel weak about ourselves when in fact you're the creator of the universe because you're creating your own reality. So the first piece is awakening to your own awareness and simply choosing love over fear. Now, that is not it's simple to say, but I want to give you the principle that we teach to do it. Here's the principle: hard, easy. And it says this: every second you face a decision, every second, if you take what appears to be the hard path, the hard choice, you make the rest of your life easy. And all we're asking for people to do is a 1 degree shift, not 10 degrees hard, just 1 degree, because that hard, easy thing you know you want to do and need to do will set you free. Discipline is freedom. Now, to my ego mind, discipline is punishment. To my creator mind, to my God self mind, to my higher self mind. And remember, love is choosing to express your higher self. Love is creating value for another, knowing the dollars, abundance, prosperity follows value back to me. So the first piece is awareness, being aware of my negative thinking and taking ownership. I'm done with it. I'm ready to do something about it. I see it. The second is interrupting the pattern interrupt. The third is reality statement. That means an affirmation and an intention. And I think that's where you can go with MINDTRX. It's so powerful because what it's doing is it's putting these new realities, helping you implant these new realities in such a positive and beautiful way.
exactly. At the beginning of every paraliminal listening session is stating your intention.
Beautiful.
So that is the reality statement. Once you've done it, you're already attracting to you the resources necessary to realize it.
Yeah. And remember, folks, it takes a little bit of time. It takes time to change. Now, I know that change is scary, but remember, the law of change says we're all changing constantly, right? That the only changeless thing is change, but you have a choice of which direction to go. There's only three directions: up, down, down, sideways. Up is called choice. You can choose. Sideways is chance. Ah, I can't help it. Life is a bee and then you die. And the only thing inevitable is death and taxes. That's chance. That's the same paradigm you're currently running. And then the bottom paradigm is crisis, right? Do nothing and let the crisis that is in front of us keep going without taking any positive action. You create your own reality. And that's why when you're practicing April, you're changing your mind, you're changing the reality. And MINDTRX can certainly help you do that, as can soul purpose meditations if you choose to move.
So we got the intention, that's reality statement. Now I is instant prayer.
Yeah.
So what is instant prayer?
That's where you're using the
The
power
choice?
of that's where you're using the power of the spoken word and affirmations,
All right.
especially within your own mind. You're changing, I can't do this. I can't, to how can I? The universe is this incredibly orderly place that when you ask it a question in a sincere, what I call a heart's prayer, is simply dropping from the head to the heart. The heart is an organ of spiritual perception. So I don't want to talk about the heart just as the blood pumping heart, which obviously is clearly important, but it's the nexus of the cross between the outer world and the inner world, right? So when you go into the heart, you're really saying things like, how can I? What would love do now? If love were in the room right now, directing me how to think, what is the most disciplined thing that I could do? What is the thing that I could do that I normally may not do? And only one single, simple, doable thing. Here's my list of things I don't like. What am I going to do about it? Let me take the one and let me just do one thing. What would love have me do to solve that one thing? Who is the person that I could create value for? Who could I ask how they would do it? So instant prayer is really understanding that your life is created, you exist through language ontologically, which is the study of being, right? We're always speaking to ourselves. What's your inner dialogue? If your inner dialogue is, I can't, you're right. If your inner dialogue is, how can I? Instantly questions open space and a new possibility begins coming as long as you're practicing hard easy. And only 1 degree shift, not 365-degree shift, because that's just going to bring you right to where you are. 1 degree each day.
Super powerful. And at this moment, this is where you drop the mic and leave the stage because you pretty much nailed it. It is instant prayer really is opening to the resources that are abundantly with us at every moment in time, and they're not somewhere out there, they are within. And the guidance of, for example, as you said, who might I contact, who might I talk to, what might I read, what energy might I get into that can make a difference at this moment, then the answer is always right on the heel of that question. We have to formulate the question.
You are always in a mind track. And our society right now has a bit of an illness going around, which is our social media is its purpose and its intention is not for you to live a life you love. It's to get you to click more and more and more on what they're feeding you. And it's become a race to the bottom of the brainstem, as Tristan Harris says in
That's a
The
good
Social
one.
Dilemma, right?
All right.
It's a race to pull you back into fear and fight or flight mode. And so everybody's walking around. They've been hitting their pain points over and over because marketers keep hitting your pain points. Everybody's walking around in pain. Everybody's pretending they're a guru. Everybody's pretending they have all the answers on social media, but in fact, all the answers lie within you by accessing what I call not waiting for the descending God to save us, but rather to awaken the ascending God self within you through the power of love, which is the L in April.
Gorgeous. Steve D'Annunzio, super cool to be with you. Thank you so much for all that you shared. This is one, I have to say, as a listener, you're probably going to want to put it in slow-mo and go through it because some of the gems that you dropped on us are years of study and brilliantly presented. Thank you so much for being here.
Paul, I so appreciate you. Send my love to Libby and to all you listeners out there. Be well. You have something really special and unique happening. Keep going. You're doing great.
Yay, yay. Bye for now.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Steve D'Annunzio. You can learn more about Steve at www.missiondrivenadvisor.com. And now in the second part of the podcast, it's just you and me. I'll tell you how to use the Paraliminals sessions in the MINDTRX app to easily handle obstacles and move toward the success you want, especially as it relates to Steve's message. If you're new to the relaxing Paraliminal audio sessions, they use breakthrough technologies to activate your whole mind in only 20 minutes to help improve any area of your life. Let's get going. Hello and welcome to this follow-on session to my conversation with Steve D'Annunzio. Wow, there was so much great information that was presented by Steve and a lot to live into. So this is our opportunity to really look at how can we embody moving, shifting into the prosperity paradigm by following our soul purpose. And I broke the session into several different components that you might consider working on to embody for yourself. Certainly any time that you see something or hear something in a podcast that resonates with you, make a note of it. And you can always ask the AI on the MINDTRX app, hey, if I want to listen to some Paraliminals that will help me with this, what's recommended? And you'll get a really good list of Paraliminals that could support you in gaining access to the resources necessary to live into that idea. So I broke it into these concepts. First is, how do we shift away from fear? Secondly, how do we stay in a cycle of growth and development into the prosperity paradigm? Third is, how do we fully step into the abundance that's available to us? And finally, how do we attract the results that we're seeking to create in our lives? Now, while I would probably be wise to just give you one to listen to, I'm going to recommend several and say where I would start. So when we talk about shifting away from fear, the three Paraliminals that come to mind right away, first of all, overcoming overwhelm. When we're overwhelmed, we're downregulated, we're in that fear-based part of our brain. It's very difficult to get out of it. So in order to do that, overcoming overwhelm is a great way to go. Nextly is anxiety-free. So as we look at our future, we see an unobstructed view of what's possible for us, rather than taking the fears from our past and setting them in front of ourselves in order to think, ooh, I'm not going to be fully resourced to be able to accomplish this. And the third is fearlessness. Fearlessness is a way of stepping into this day, knowing that I'm fully resourced to accomplish what it is that I truly desire. Now, if I were to say, in terms of shifting away from fear, what would be the most effective? I would say waking up with fearlessness is probably the one that I would start with. But again, based on where you're at and what your mind is tending to do around concepts of fear or not enoughness, then you can make that shift. You can make that choice. The second area that Steve and I got into is this idea of being in a cycle of growth that's shifting us from the scarcity mentality or mindset or paradigm into a prosperity mindset, paradigm consciousness, recognizing that we are fully resourced to be able to accomplish what we desire. So the three paraliminals that I feel really work on this idea of staying in a cycle of growth and development. First of all, one is called new option generator. That's the feeling, as he talked about, you've got a choice to make. There's the hard one and the easy one. You don't want to necessarily go the hard route, but that 1% shift is really going to help you make the rest of your life easy. Got to do it. So you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. New option generator really clears the way for you to be able to make progress. The second paraliminal in this area would be self-actualization, recognizing that we move up this pyramid to living a self-actualized life. Every step along the way is a step of sufficiency. Recognize that your basic needs, your self-esteem are in place and you can self-actualize. And even beyond self-actualization is self-transcendence. And I think in Steve's story about going through his dark night of the soul was a story of resurrection, death and resurrection into the life of abundance that he knows is available to him. But for whatever reason, he was stuck in old patterns, not allowing that healing work to occur. And to be self-transcendent means that we go beyond our needs into the pure love, the pure light and possibility that's available to us in life. It's a great paraliminal. The third one in this area would be self-discipline. You know what it is you need to do. Let's, on a daily basis, follow as a disciple, follow that way of being that we are choosing for ourselves to live into. So self-discipline, new option generator, self-actualization, self-discipline. The one that I would recommend to start with would probably be self-actualization, because it really sets the stage of the growth cycle that you're choosing to be in. The third area is the area of stepping into abundance. And here, there are three that I really love that can help tremendously. The first is prosperity. I have to say the prosperity paraliminal is one that I recommend probably more than any other, because it really is the essence of paraliminal technology, that the resources that we need to take the next step are within us already. It's a matter of gaining access to those. Prosperity is really about that. And you set your intention of what area of your life are you wanting to bring a sense of greater abundance. Whatever it is, it'll help you get there. The second paraliminal in this really deals with the idea of sufficiency, that the universe is always giving us what we need in a sufficient quantity to live into our life's purpose. And that paraliminal is called Soul of Money, that I did with Lynn Twist. It's based on her book, Soul of Money. Great resources, really powerful paraliminal. The third is wealth motivation. Remember the idea that the only an everlasting source of profit, or we could say wealth, is the creation of value. So the more that you're in that concept of, well, how can I live my life today to create value for those I serve? Now you're on it. You're really on it on a daily basis. So prosperity, soul of money, wealth, motivation, all really good in terms of helping us step into a life of abundance. Now, the fourth and final area that I felt was a strong topic within the dialogue I had with Steve was attracting the results you seek. A friend of Steve's and mine, this person who initiated the Transformational Leadership Council that Steve and I are both members of, Jack Canfield, collaborated with me and created a paraliminal called Living the Law of Attraction. A lot of what Steve said was about the attractor factor, the idea that we're either minus humanity or we're plus humanity. And depending upon which side of the yin-yang model you fall in, you're going to resonate to and end up producing that result. So living the law of attraction says we're going to focus on plus life, adding to life, creating value, bringing our true gifts and talents into the world in service for this greater purpose that we live. Law of attraction, powerful paraliminal. The second one is positive relationships, specifically session B, which is being able to attract to you and surround yourself with those positive thoughts, ideas, and individuals who really are supportive of what it is you're choosing to create. And Steve talked about that today. Who could I call to help break through on this particular area? Neat thing about the MINDTRX app, which Paraliminal will help me break through in this area, and then you've got it built in. So play with that for sure. Positive relationships, session B, really great in terms of creating attracting the results that you seek. And the final one in this is finding treasure. It's this idea that around us are abundant resources. And when we get off the lens of scarcity and we put on the lens of abundance and prosperity, we begin seeing all of the possibilities, all the opportunities to take a step forward to create the life that we truly want to live. So in attracting the results you seek, I have law of attraction, positive relations, session B, and finding treasure. Where would I start? I would say living the law of attraction would be a great one to start with. Or you could start with finding treasure. Either one would be really great. Certainly, living the law of attraction sets the stage of what does it mean to be vibrating energetically at that level that you're putting out into the world that which you seek to receive in abundance back to you. Well, it's been fun. It was a great session that I had with Steve D'Annunzio. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thanks for being here and being a part of the MINDTRX podcast. Peace and blessings. Look forward to seeing you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me today. I applaud your willingness to maximize your potential. You can easily use the Paraliminal audio sessions in the MINDTRX app to stimulate your non-conscious mind, that is, your inner mind, to reduce any resistance in your life and to propel you toward the success you want. Go to www.mindtrx.com/go. These amazing audio tools have helped millions, and I encourage you to bring them into your life today. Be sure to be back for more episodes of the MINDTRX podcast. You'll find insightful conversations with authors, experts, and thought leaders, all devoted to improving your life's experience. Thank you again for being here on our MINDTRX podcast.